Yesterday, after what must have been countless hours, spread across months and years, a dedicated fan named Maxime Thomas released his beautiful monstrosity into the world.
Both are being held as hostages. Secondly, you're to investigate whether or not the terrorists have the ability to make a nuclear strike, and stop them if they do.
And honestly, considering how cursed it can be, it's pretty good. To be clear, this isn't a complete remake of Metal Gear Solid. It's a playable tribute built in Unity, containing a tutorial and 2 sections from the original game and its boss battles. But as far as I can tell, Maxime created most of this himself, from the gameplay systems and character models to the cinematics and animation. Most of the dialogue and sound effects are taken from the original game, aside from parts of the soundtrack, but everything surrounding the audio has been rebuilt to show us what a modern MGS1 remake could potentially look and play like. I, like many of us, have now had the privilege of playing it. Now, with the praise temporarily out of the way, this game is extremely buggy, badly optimized and just borderline unplayable in certain areas. Yet it becomes so unintentionally comical that, strangely enough, the brokenness sometimes made me enjoy it even more.
Alert! What the f***? What the f*** was that?
The character models are genuinely impressive. Don't get me wrong, they can look hilarious from certain angles. Some of their hair components are particularly strange at first. I thought Liquid and Ocelot had ponytails. But these are handcrafted models, made for a fan project, and some of them genuinely look better than the Ubisoft models we've seen in Rainbow Six. Upon starting the game, you're greeted by an epic main menu that resembles the original while giving it a modern twist. Snake is kitted out with night vision, the presentation is dark and very militaristic, and the entire thing carries that Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes aesthetic. The game recommends beginning with the VR training, so that's where I decided to familiarise myself with the controls. It claims that controllers are supported, but neither I nor several other players have managed to get one working properly. Few buttons do respond, while the rest just seemingly decide they had better things to do. So back to the good old days of mouse and keyboard. Maxime had designed the controls to resemble a typical modern action game. You have easier aiming, crouch walking, over the shoulder shooting, and most of the movements that you would now expect. What surprised me was just how smooth Snake felt to control. It isn't quite Metal Gear Solid 5, but dare I say it feels more precise and less rigid than Snake's slightly robotic movements in MGS Delta. The tutorial itself is put together really well, and just make sure though that you don't fall through the map in the process. The VR section introduces most of the systems you'll encounter in the main game, although that campaign content is also broken. The first 2 levels are supposedly available, yet I couldn't progress beyond the docking area. Close quarters combat functions similarly to the original, although enemies seem to take considerably longer to incapacitate. There is a throw command, but it's awkward to use. The chokehold is still there, along with most of the familiar sound effects. However, Maxime doesn't appear to add every single audio clip. Most of them are in there, but some are not. But don't worry, let me fix that issue.
Alert!
Brutal, savage, wrecked.
What genuinely surprised me was the attention to detail, and this is where you can tell Maxime understands Metal Gear. Guards can still hear Snake's footsteps like before, meaning crouch walking is actively encouraged, although the detection can still be unreliable and, to be fair, it's quite poorly executed. Also, if you stand staring at Meryl, she reacts and makes comments like she did before, which is pretty cool.
What are you staring at?
During the Psycho Mantis encounter as well, instead of receiving the original black screen with Hideo in the corner, you get this. The main attraction, however, is the boss battle selection. I think this is where Max actually put all of his resources and time into. Some battles include sections from the mission leading into them, and I started with Revolver Ocelot. which meant finding the weakened walls, planting C4 and almost blowing myself up before I even reached him. Once inside, I was greeted by the new version of the Armtech's president, and it was hilarious seeing Maxime's interpretation of him. Why do they call him the Armtech president anyway? He doesn't really have any arms to begin with.
Snake, answer me! Snake! Snake!
Anyway, the battle itself plays exactly as you remember. Ocelot runs around the room like a spaz. You chase him and attempt to land your shots without hitting the president. The encounter is put together remarkably well. Experiencing it through a modern camera and MGS5 style control scheme gives the battle an entirely different rhythm. More importantly, it is one of the fights you can actually complete without the game collapsing around you. Unfortunately, that brings us to Metal Gear Rex. Because this fight is a fucking nightmare. The biggest problem with the entire project is its performance. The frame rate can become unbearable, and I strongly advise against running it at 4K for all you graphic phallus lovers out there, because that appears to make everything even slower. So before some absolute nerd says, maybe it's your PC, bro, my hardware is well within the times. I can run considerably more demanding games, including heavily modded GTA 5, without this level of lag or stuttering. Part of me believes Maxime should have waited and addressed these problems before releasing the project, but at the same time, releasing it now effectively turns the community into a group of playtesters. We can identify the problems together, report them, and hopefully give him the information needed to improve it. That matters because underneath the technical problems, this is genuinely fun. I eventually defeated the first phase of Rex after a painfully slow battle. Sometimes the Stinger missiles can simply cause no damage. I fired one directly at the radome and watched it fly straight through. I mean, come on. Recovering from mistakes becomes incredibly difficult because the game is moving at a fucking snail's pace. Dodging attacks becomes inconsistent, meaning you need every ration you can find, and probably several more that don't exist. I eventually stopped taking the second phase seriously. I mainly stayed because I wanted to see the brilliant cinematics Maxime created before and after these encounters. I then moved on to Sniper Wolf's battles, which were genuinely enjoyable. I love how the PSG-1 no longer feels as restrictive as it did in the original games, where equipping it immediately locked you into the scope. Here, the rifle sits naturally behind Snake's shoulder, with an additional button allowing you to enter the scope whenever you choose. I think it's an idea that Metal Gear Solid 4 introduced to the Metal Gear saga and then MGS5 later developed, and all the mechanics now flow together while Snake remains mobile. The rolling animation is surprisingly good. You can even perform a belly roll, although I completely forgot how to do it because the game can be so janky. The main problem with the Sniper Wolf encounter is the lighting. Large areas of the game are simply just too dark, and I don't think enough lights have been properly rigged throughout the environments. In the original game, you could still see Wolf without relying on entirely your equipment. Here, she frequently disappears into the darkness. That said, I do appreciate though how this encourages you to use the thermal goggles to locate her and line up a shot. It's a really good way to give us the incentive. The second battle is also well constructed, just quite buggy. The game doesn't give you enough time to recover after being hit, like literally. Thankfully there is cover available, so that's cool. Truthfully, I remember becoming so tired of sniping that I just charged across the snowfield, something you couldn't do before, and blasted her with the SOCOM instead.
Okay.
Once again, the encounter is supported by some brilliant cinematics. I really like Maxime's younger version of Otacon and Naomi, and they all look great. Sadly, I couldn't find Mei Ling anywhere. However, in the making of this video, I saw someone on a stream who managed to get to the second part of Shadow Moses and actually have a brief conversation with Mei Ling. The Liquid encounter on top of Rex is, well, let's just say it could use some work. For the most part, the hand-to-hand combat functions surprisingly well. Liquid's AI behaves properly, and the game introduces a welcome counter or block command that allows Snake to slam an enemy on the ground. The problem is that after being thrown from Rex a few times, Snake can glitch through the environment and fall directly through the map. The tank battle works alright. The over-the-shoulder camera and crosshair makes switching between weapons much easier, and throwing grenades is simple enough. The throwing indicator isn't properly aligned, but after experimenting with it you can work out where the grenade is actually going to land. Unlike the original, the hit isn't handled automatically, you still need to aim and land the grenade on the tank yourself. But Psycho Mantis was easily the best boss battle in the entire project. His attack patterns are enjoyable and challenging without becoming completely unreasonable. He still throws furniture around like a maniac, disappears from sight, and generally behaves like Psycho Mantis should. There still are problems when he attempts to force Meryl to shoot herself. She sometimes just stands there doing absolutely nothing. I mean, shoot yourself already!
Useless woman.
Interestingly, if Meryl is killed, the additional animations and Snake's emotional outburst have all been placed in. And no, you don't need to physically switch your controller port this time. The Heim battle was acceptable as well, although I didn't see it through to the end. Ammunition eventually respawns, but not consistently enough. It becomes tedious, running around the area, waiting for another missile to appear, and the Stinger's lock-on system doesn't even function nearly as reliable as it should. The Vulcan Raven encounter was also promising, but it exposed another major problem with how the game resets its battles. Sometimes after dying in one encounter and loading another, Snake will immediately die again. It feels as though the game isn't correctly resetting its parameters between attempts. I mean, it's still a pretty cool boss battle though, all that aside once you've restarted it. The clearest example happened during the Grey Fox fight. I reached the third stage where Fox begins teleporting around the room, and after dying and restarting, his third stage attacks remained active whilst his entire health bar had been restored. When he eventually begins spasming out, the game can also fail to trigger the following cutscene. I could have kept restarting until everything worked correctly, but my time is precious and I wasn't in the mood to repeat the entire battle whilst hoping the game finally behaved itself. That ultimately describes the entire remake situation, but with that said, it has the potential to become a genuinely entertaining experience, but there are currently too many setbacks for me to recommend playing it at this time. The performance is too slow, too many encounters can break, and several basic quality of life systems need additional work. I know that might seem harsh and a bit too bluntly honest, but I'd rather just tell it as it is than just give you some bullshit. The fact that he's even put this together though is impressive in itself. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to begin. I mean, Snake as well can become locked in position at times and your weapon occasionally refuses to fire. Sometimes he simply decides to even start moving by himself. The project is technically functional, but only in the same way Rex is technically functional whilst one of your missiles passes directly through its radome. I probably won't play it again in its current state. However, Maxime still deserves an enormous praise for the dedication required to create this. A professional studio would never release a game in this condition, but a professional studio also didn't build this largely alone, and that's what makes this really so much more impressive, is the fact that this guy did this completely solo. At least I think he did. This is a deeply flawed tribute made by somebody who clearly loves Metal Gear Solid. It may be just nothing more than a little fan project and he may not do anything with it. It isn't ready, but it deserves the opportunity to become better if he chooses to make it better. So please show Maxime some support. If you still want to experience the project for yourself, I'll link his original video containing the download below. Anyway, until we meet again, see you later.
Snake! What was she fighting for? What am I fighting for? What are you fighting for?
If we make it through this, I'll tell you.
Okay,